can't escape the magic. By Art Fox. Chapter 22. The stars above Balbad twinkled brightly as Sinbad pled his case to the fog troop. Senna absently ignored the adults around him as he swiped a hand over his bloody nose. His hand was sticky now, small grits of sand from the roof stuck to the blood. Senna grimaced at the sensation. The night air of Balbad was cold and windy on top of the hotel roof. He was cold and bloody, and his head hurt like no man's business. Meanwhile, Aladdin made an impressed sound, looking at the impressive display Sinbad was making.
Wow, Mr. Sinbad sure is an impressive man. I can certainly see why he's become so famous.
His voice was passive and light. Senna felt something in his chest twitch. He couldn't let Aladdin fall for Sinbad's game, whatever it was. He didn't fail to notice that while Sinbad never took his eyes off Ali Baba, his face shifted just a bit when he heard Aladdin's words. It was obvious he was happy to be praised by the brunette. But that didn't stop Sinbad from talking incessantly at the fog troop. That man could certainly talk. He kept going on and on about the distortions of the world, or some tripe. Every word from his mouth sent shivers down Senna's spine. He was confident, bold, and persuasive, every inch a Slytherin. His words, his tone, his body language, every piece of him sang with conviction and sincerity. He was utterly convincing. Senna could see it on the faces of the fog troop members. Despair and desperation eased away, melting like fragile winter mist into the sweet blossoms of springtime hope. They were ready to throw their cause and abilities at the feet of Sinbad and follow wherever he goes. Even Ali Baba, now crouching on his knees, looked on in awe at the man before him. Sinbad held his arms open and relaxed, as though waiting for Ali Baba and the rest of the troop to fall into his embrace. He laid out the examples of his distortion of the world. Poverty, discrimination, war, slavery, and other such atrocities were listed by the Sindrian king. He raised his hand into a fist over his chest, openly declaring his sincerity. As the ruler of Sindria, it fills me with sorrow. Therefore, I want to end Balbad's strife and solve the distortion of the world, if I can. What do you say to that? Ali Baba looked as clued in on what was happening as a fish would in the desert, his mouth agape and his expression dazed. What in the world? Ali Baba wondered at the outrageous things Sinbad was saying. Wasn't this the guy that was just beating the absolute hell out of him a second ago? Now he was offering to help the fog troop? What was going on? Don't be fooled! A shout came from the side. Kasim shook off Mesroor and stood up, his face a portrait of rage and bubbling fury. He's a king, damn it! Kasim reminded everyone. He doesn't want to help us. Kasim swung an arm to point accusingly at Sinbad. Oh, you rich bastards are the same. The only way you're truly happy is watching dirty streetlets like us starving to death out here. Isn't that right? He sneered at the royal before him. If it means you can go on living in luxury, am I wrong? He demanded. Well, am I, great King Sinbad? A sudden streak of red startled Kasim. His cheek bloomed in a sharp jolt of pain as he fell backwards in shock. Jafar stood above him. A crimson cord emerging from his hand caught Kasim's eye. Narrow gold followed the thread down to the ground by his hip. A silver dagger was embedded in the stonework rooftop. A dark shiver came over the bandit. A knife. This pale, gentle-looking noble had thrown that knife so fast he couldn't see it. That was why his cheek was hot. He had sliced him just enough to warn him, cutting him so thinly that only a few drops warmed his face. Jafar's face was calm. Too calm. Dangerously calm. The calm that only assassins could obtain in the face of abject violence. Detached, dead, gray eyes stared down at Kasim, pale, fearful face. He could have been gazing at a wall of wet paint for all the interest his face showed. But his eyes told another story. Though Jafar's expression was placid, his eyes gleamed with menacing rage, dead and cold and dispassionate, like the eyes of a furious desert viper coiling and readying its venom. Shut up! He hissed softly. So soft that Kasim had to strain to hear him, making his demand even more terrifying. The teenage bandit felt his legs try to twitch and close, instinctively protecting his most important parts. Shock and fear radiated from him and was echoed by the fearful whisperings of his troop. Jafar coiled the scarlet cord back into his fist, the dagger held tightly, ready to be thrown again. This time he wouldn't be warning Kasim. There would be real blood spilled. He stepped swiftly over to the bandit, his footsteps echoing loudly across the now silent rooftop. The clacks of his shoes were only interrupted by the slight whimpers Kasim unknowingly released. Jafar gripped his tunic and pointed the dagger at Kasim's throat, carelessly watching his blood thumping through his jugular as he threatened the boy. "You don't know the wounds that Sin has sustained," he informs him, "or all the sacrifices he's had to make." Jafar raised his blade, eager to take the life of the fool who dared disrespect his king. "You know nothing, you insignificant brigand!" He slammed the dagger down. A splash of blood hit the rooftop. Kasim felt a trickle of cowardice slip from him as he flinched away. But it wasn't his blood that now decorated the roof. Sinbad's hand slipped around the knife as he halted Jafar's assault. "Stop," he calmly addressed his subordinate. "That's enough, Jafar." His words were enough to jolt the light back into Jafar's eyes, now full of regret at his actions. Not for harming Kasim, for surely no one who insulted Sinbad so readily was anything less than the enemy, but for forcing his king to go out of his way to stop him, and for hurting his king in the process. I'm sorry," Jafar gasped, his eyes wide with remorse. "All right." Sinbad easily gave his forgiveness. Ali Baba rushed to Kasim's side, flinging a hand to separate his friend from the pair of Sindrians. "All right," he cried. "That's enough. Knock it off." "So, you decided to let me into your troop, right?" Sinbad steamrolled over Ali Baba. "Thanks a lot." Ali Baba muttered, "Uh-huh," mouth still agape, mind still starstruck at the confusing man before him. Aladdin and the others were still to the side of the action.
Mr. Jafar can be a little frightening, can't he?"
he remarked. Mesro nodded. "Sometimes." Senna snorted at that. A thick glob of congealed blood shot out of his nose. Ow! New, bright blood began trickling down his face in thick streams. Knocked it twisted around to face him.
"Senna, are you okay?"
"Oh, yeah. I'm fine." Senna tried using his hands to stem the flow, but the sanguine fluid fell over his fingers.
"Are you sure? That's a lot of blood."
Aladdin tried moving Senna's hands away, but the little purplet squirmed away with a whine. "Senna?" Sinbad finally turned away from the fog troop, came over and knelt in front of the boy. "Let me see," he commanded, pulling his little hands away. "No, it's fine. It doesn't even hurt." Senna squirmed away, or tried to. Sinbad quickly restrained his wriggling limbs and scooped the boy into his arms and braced him firmly to his hip. "Jafar!" Sinbad commanded. The light-haired vizier quickly came closer, bearing a handkerchief. "Here." Sinbad took the cloth and pressed it firmly under Senna's nose, his little face scorched in distaste. "Stop it, I'm fine. You fuss like an old lady." "Well, you bleed like a stuck pig, so deal with my old lady fussing." Sinbad quipped back, readjusting the boy up higher on his hip. "How did your nose stop bleeding anyway?" "I don't know," Senna grimaced. "It happened while we were in the bag." "Bag? What bag?" "The fog troop man knocked me in a bag." "What?" With that exclamation, Senna just knew it would be a long night.